Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome back to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. Welcome home to Torah. A warm welcome home to Torah. As you know, we use the Yakar as the basis for our discussion. We encourage you to go to the link below in the description box, and you will pick up the original Hebrew sheets. The nuances that you can only see in the Hebrew will help you to learn Hebrew as well. And I just want to start off by saying that our Chayalim have been called up in mass, the reserves, and there's been a great demand for tefillin, and we've had an overwhelming amount of requests. We started last week with 5, now we're up to 15 pair, and they're expensive. So Baruch Hashem, some of the, how should I say it, some of the donations have been coming in, and I want to thank you, and I want to encourage you to help and give. Okay, so here we go. We're in chapter 6 of Numbers, verse 23. It's basically what we call Birkas Kohanim, right? The special priestly blessing. What you may not have noticed in the English is the word ko, because it's only in Hebrew. Of course you wouldn't have noticed it. So the English says, speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, so Moses commanded by God, tell Aaron and his sons what? This is how you should bless the children of Israel. You should say to them. And then we have Birkas Kohanim, the blessing, the priestly blessing that every father knows because they bless their children on Friday night. The mothers bless their daughters, right? We bless our children. It's so beautiful. And it begins with these words. Daber el Aaron ve'el banav lemor, right? Speak to Aaron and to his sons, telling them, Ko, in Hebrew, Ko, Kaf Hey, Tivarchu, thusly you shall bless. This is how you shall bless et Bnei Yisrael and Mor Lehem. That is the verse we're going to be dealing with. So if you looked into the Parsha itself, beginning with chapter 6, verses 1 through 22, it's dealing with the laws of the Nazir, the one who made a vow. Part of the vow is a separation from grapes in general, more specifically wine, but anything to do with grapes. And the Yakar points out, Samach habrachot lenizirut. There is some kind of connection here, some kind of the very fact that there's a close proximity to the blessing of the Kohanim, to the laws of staying away from grapes, from wine specifically. You must take notice. And what he says is, Ki hayayin kovei bracha liyatzmo, avolo la'acherim. It's a very difficult thing to explain. However, wine makes a person feel good. A person feels elevated, elated, but not necessarily will that permeate the surroundings. It may not. In fact, we'll see that it actually could bring quite a lot of damage. So basically, it'll make the person feel good, but it won't necessarily bring blessing to the world. The Adarabba, and even more so, Hevi Yolala Uklala Leolam. This is a very harsh statement, but we'll take it as a fact that intoxication, specifically with wine, can bring wailing and cause curses to come to the world. Like it says in Gemara Sanhedrin, there's actually a 4-way maklokus, a 4-way argument. What exactly was the original, the Eitz Hadas, right? The original tree of knowledge of Tov Ra, of good and evil. It's 4 different opinions. And I'll tell you the truth, apple is not one of them. It's very interesting why the non-Jews think it's the apple. And I'll give you some insight. First of all, Rabbi Meir, which we're going to follow tonight, holds that it's the grape. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's the wheat. Rabbi Nehemiah holds that it's the fig. And Rabbi Abba of Akko hold it's the citron, it's the etrog. And now, so Rabbi Meir holds, why is it not the apple? So the Garden of Eden had the smell, the aroma of apples. Alicia, you heard this? It smelled like that. So those on the inside of the Garden of Eden knew what the tree of knowledge of good and evil was. It's those who are on the outside of the Garden of Eden can only use their imagination. And it must be the apple because it smells like apples. But it shows you they're on the outside. Those who say it's the apple are on the outside of the Garden of Eden. Okay? Okay, so he mentions Adarabah can even bring worse things into the world, and we see Eitz Hadas, Geffen Haya, according to Rabbi Meir, that it was the Geffen. Geffen meaning that it was a great vine. And not only that, what happened as a result of, Adam and Eve? V'chein garam klala la'adam v'chava. It is true that as a result of the consuming the wine or the geffen, it caused a curse to come into the world through Adam and Eve. He continues and he says, "Ulezara shel Noach," but also to the seed of Noach. There was the very first thing that Noach did after the boat landed or hit land was he planted a vineyard. He did get drunk, and his sons, which ones? We had three, right? Shem, Yafis, and Ham. Shem and Yafis came and covered him after they heard. But who discovered it? Ham. And not only did Ham discover it, there's a machlokas on what Canaan did. See, God already blessed Ham. So God cursed Canaan. So whether it was Canaan or Ham is irrelevant at this point. But the machlokas is whether he was sodomized or castrated. Okay? That one of his sons did, or grandsons did. So wine took a nasty turn for the world in relation to Lot. And the last thing, with Noach. And what about Lot? The Yakar mentions Lot. What happened with Lot? So, listen, if you discovered or thought you were the last man on the planet, and you had two daughters, what would you do? Well, they got him drunk, and I'm going to say they took advantage of him in order to keep the world going. But it was nevertheless a disgusting act, right, as we will say. But the older one got him drunk the first night. And what did he do the second night? He knew. When he got up in the morning, he was aware of what happened, and he allowed himself to get drunk a second time. And that could be, not sure, that could have been what was unnecessary. The first night, okay, he got drunk, they got him drunk. But the second night, he allowed himself to get drunk. He didn't guard himself against getting drunk. And that brought negativity to the world. Okay, let's continue. Well, Milat Ko, he's now going to focus, the Yakar is now going to focus on that word Ko. And he says, Koi a Parashat Shalamala. When we say, thusly, this is how you should bless the Jewish people, the word Ko is going on what was just spoken about, which was Nazirus, which was abstinence from wine. And what do we learn from that? If the word is going Ko, this is basically on what was just said, that when you bless, don't drink. A Kohen cannot cannot be drunk or have drunken wine when he blesses. It doesn't say he shouldn't be sheker. It says he shouldn't have drunk wine, okay, when he stands to bless the Jewish people. Now, interestingly enough, the Rambam brings down that, well, we all agreed you shouldn't be drunk, but the Rambam brings down regarding mincha service on a fast day. So you'll notice here in Eretz Yisrael, you might not notice this in Chutz La'aretz because most of the Ashkenazim are not doing Birkas Hamazon, the priestly blessing on a daily basis. So what happens when there's a fast day at Mincha time? So we'll notice in the Ashkenazi world, right, that at Mincha, if you daven at 1 o'clock or 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a fast day, we won't do Birkat Kohanim. But if it's later, like really close to Shkia, from Prague and Mincha onward, somewhere about an hour before sunset, then the Kohanim will do the priestly blessing at Mincha. And what's the reason? See, if there's a fast day, nobody's eating or drinking. Right? I'm emphasizing the drinking part. They're neither eating nor drinking, and therefore there's no possibility of getting drunk. The possibility exists when you eat, right, at least in France, supposedly, allegedly, right, they drink wine with all their meals. So if you're not having a meal, you're not going to drink. But the Gemara discusses this. What happens when you have a normal weekday mincha, and you compare that to a fast day mincha, you may get miscongratulated and confused. Just like on a fast day, you're going to have Birkas Kohanim at, let's say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're going to say, well, why aren't we doing that at mincha on a regular day? So people might get confused. The Rambam actually held that you wouldn't do it any of the time of the year, meaning any of the fast days, because you might get confused. And that's really going back to a Gemara. But halacha lamaisa, as I mentioned, that we will do it. And the reason is because if it's close enough to Shkia, it's closer to a Ne'ilah service. And we know that a Ne'ilah service, you would do Birkas Kohanim. So the very fact that if you daven mincha late, then it would be okay. Now, let's continue with the Yakar. And he says right after he quotes the Rambam, Kitzarach lemur habrachot. The brachas have to be said, not slurred. Right? They have to be said. And more lehem. It says you have to say to them, you're going to give the bracha through your mouth as a intelligent human being, as if you were standing before a king. Nikra shikor, kol she'eno yochel daber lifnei hamelech. It says in Gemara Eruvin that if you cannot speak in front of a king, then that is like the definition of drunk, and therefore one should not do Birkas Kohanim if they are intoxicated. Therefore, the Yakar ends that that's why there's a smichut, that's why there's a juxtaposition, because the Parsha of Nazirus is showing you that you should not drink. It's not proper to drink, so it says kin Nazir, not actually as a Nazir, and that you're allowed a Kohen, let's say before Musaf on Simplest Torah. So everyone is drinking, he shouldn't drink. He's going to duchen. Can he be Yotzei Kiddush? Of course, by hearing someone else, or by using grape juice. Okay, so he can still fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush. Okay, so one question that may be asked, right? First of all, why not forbid wine altogether, according to one opinion? And we know that Kiddush is supposed to be done on wine, 4 cups of wine on Pesach. We have a little bit of wine to get Besume on Purim. It actually says in the Torah not to be a drunkard, not to drink too much wine, not to be, I don't know what, I don't want to describe what a drunkard could be, but he's obviously, or she's obviously bringing a shame to herself or himself and the family, right? That's what can happen when people drink too much. So the idea is to have self-control. Okay, now you want to say, well, what about the other ones, right? Well, wheat, I mean, come on. It's a staple, right? Okay, so figs and citron. I don't know how many people eat citron. I make it for Tu B'Shvat Seder. But the idea is, number one, self-control. Don't eat too much esrog. Don't eat too many figs. You might get what's called shulshul. Wheat, don't eat too much either, right? But the idea, I think, is when it comes to grapes, especially self-control. But what I did want to mention is that why did, according to some opinions, Noach plant the vineyard? Now, it could be after spending a year on the yacht there, you want to have a nice cup of wine. However, according to some, he was actually trying to metaken, trying to fix what Adam Arishon had made a mistake with, meaning to use it properly. He failed. So Adam failed, Noah failed. What makes you think you could use the same thing and make it right? So it's tempting, and it's a big nikshel. It's a big stumbling block for many, many people. If you have a society that only uses wine for religious purposes and in extreme moderation, I think you stand a chance, right? But when of not abusing it.
Right, that's right.
But when you go to a kiddush club, and who can drink more, I'm not so sure that there's too much peer pressure and abuse that goes on, right? But if you're in a healthy atmosphere where people are moderate, then you're the oddball out if you're going to abuse it. Okay, so that's just what I'm saying. I think it's to do with moderation and society and pressure and religious upbringing. It says in the Torah. When I say the Torah, I mean the Tanakh, right? Over and over again. It's not just mentioned once, right? It's actually one of the 613 commandments, not to be a drunkard. And you'll see it throughout the Nevi'im as well. Okay? So I actually think that applies to other things as well. I'm not going to mention what they are. We all know. Other vices. Very good. Okay, so the next paragraph. Ubamilat ko. That very word ko. The Yakar is saying it's a chatam kol brachot. It's somehow a sign, a signature. It gives strength to the brachos themselves. Just to know whenever the word ko is used, it's like a signature. It's like a logo. Here comes a bracha. Okay, and we're going to see it. So right here it says ko tivarchu, right? This is how you should bless. But with kaf hey, that very word is like a key, an opening. Somehow it relates to blessings. Shayu dugmat birkas Avraham. One example that he gives is in Genesis chapter 15, verse 5. It's number 5 on the source sheet. God took Avram outside. Right? He was in the tent. He took him outside the tent, and he says, please look heavenward and count the stars. If you're able to count them, he says. And then he said to him, so will be your seed. In other words, you wouldn't be able to count your seed. You'll be so blessed. V'yotzei oto hachutza v'yomer habet na hashamayma uspor hakochavim im tuchal lisporotam. Right? If you can even count them. And then he said to him, what were the exact words that God said to him right after he said you're going to have so many kids you won't be able to count them? Ko yeh zarecha. And when the ko, this is a blessing. The blessing is like a stamp. When you see the word ko, you know that it's a blessing coming up. Thusly will be your seed. It's a very interesting Rashi there, right? Pashat Pshat was you just took him outside the tent. But according to the Midrashic interpretation, what God was saying is, you are not stuck in your mazel. According to your name Avram, and according to your wife's name Avram and Sarai, you're right. You're not going to have kids. And I promise you will. So I'm going to take you outside of your fate. What the destiny. You're going to change your destiny. You're going to be above the zodiac. You're not going to be affected by the zodiac. You will affect the zodiac. So that's what Rashi brings down as he said to him, go out of your astrology, for you have seen the signs of the zodiac that you're not destined to have a son. Indeed, Avram, without the hey, Avraham, Avram will not have a son, but Abraham will. Similarly, Sarai will not give birth, but Sarah will. And I'll give you a different name and change your destiny. Okay, we're not going to get too much into this other idea that if you have to change your mazel, you have a need to change your fate, to change your name, change your location. But the main thing is to change your deeds, do more mitzvahs, be a Jew, right? Go above the zodiac. Be true to your forefather Abraham and act just like he did. So let's continue. The Yakar was saying, he quoted this verse, Ko Yeh Zerecha. Not only that, there's a few other verses we're going to get into, but the Yakar says, Al Kain Rotzo Bilim Levatam Yisrael Birkat Ko. As if fighting the Ko, what does he say to Balak? Right? He was hired by Balak to curse the Jews, to make bad things happen to the Jews. And he was quite unsuccessful. At some point, out of his frustration, he comes up with another scheme after scheme. He says to Balak, Hityatsev Ko. He says, stand thusly. I want you to do this Ko on this place, Al Olotecha, regarding your korbanos. You're going to make these offerings. What am I going to do? Bilam, Anochi Ekore Ko. I'm going to make something happen here. You're going to make something happen there with the korbanos, and I'm going to make something happen here. But he uses the word Ko twice. And what does the Yakar explain? He quotes a medrash from Rabbeinu Bechaya, which I think it's worth reading. It's on the last page of the Hebrew. So he quotes the midrash that the Rabbeinu Bechaya brings down, and I want to look at it. Right now, he just gives a few words. He says, Ata b'korbonotecha, tivatel bracha ko yezerecha. Bilam was telling Balak, you're going to bring the korbanos, and that by doing your korbanos, that's going to uproot or negate the bracha that God gave Abraham regarding the Brit Bein HaBetarim. The Brit Bein HaBetarim is where he says, right, your seed will be blessed. So will be your seed. It'll be beyond a number. Okay, so the idea here is that it's by Balak bringing korbanos, it's going to uproot the promise that God gave to Abraham over the korbanos of the Brit Bein HaBetarim. Okay, and ani mevatel bracha ko tivarchu, where I, meaning I being Bilam is a sorcerer, and birkas kohanim is like a magic formula, as we will soon see. And so Bilam is going to use the gift of the gab to try to uproot the birkas kohanim, whether through the gift of the gab or as later sending prostitutes to Bnei Israel to try to get them to be cursed. See, when you're not doing the mitzvahs and you're doing sins, then the negative consequences come as a result. So if we look at the Rabbeinu Bechaya, as I mentioned, it's the last page on the Hebrew sheets. So the Yakar is bringing Rabbeinu Bechaya. Let's take a look at Rabbeinu Bechaya. You have the sheets. Hidyat Seif Ko. As Bilam said to Balak, stand thusly, the word Ko, regarding your korbanos, while I am going to make something happen. Ikora Ko. I'm going to manifest something over here. Okay. Amar Bilam. What did Bilam say? Hine Yisrael nish'anim b'zechut hakarbanos. His claim is that the Jewish people are they're leaning on the merit of the korbanos that Hashem had promised Abraham. And like I mentioned, God says, I'm going to give you, your seed is going to be so so numerous. And Abraham says, how will I know? And right away God says, because you're going to do these korbanos. And I'm going to show you an art scroll and the medrash shortly why this is so important. That Bilam understood that the Jewish people were being guarded because of those korbanos. And not only those korbanos that Abraham did, but as we will see, the korbanos that we read every morning. If you come to our minyan early enough, right? What do? We do korbanos. Very important. So the Jewish people, this is what Bilam was thinking, that since they're relying on the promise of Kadosh Baruch Hu that God gave to Abraham, and also the Heimna Sha'anim Bezachut Brachas Kohanim, as our verse says, Ko Tevarchu. Both verses have Kaf Hey. So too, he also said to Moshe. Moses sent agents, right, to the king of Edom. I'll tell you where. In Numbers chapter 20, verse 14. Look on the source sheet. It's number 9. Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. So says your brother Israel. They wanted to go through. They wanted to have some, a comfort of some water, a little bit of bread. Just at least allow us go through. We don't have to cut around the long way. You know all the hardship that befell us. But the Hebrew is, right? V'yishlach Moshe malachim mikadesh el melech Edom ko amar achicha Yisrael. When you want something, a blessing, you're looking forward to something good, ko is used. That is the context over there. So the Rabbeinu B'chaya brought this pasuk as well. Lekach, therefore, what does he conclude? Hityatzef ko alalotecha, when Bilam said to Balak, stand here thusly, regarding your korbanos, v'tolato echad. Bilam was saying, you're going to take one portion, you're going to take one side, v'ani atol hasheni, while I'm going to stand on the other side and take the other side. That's why he says, anochi ekra ko, I'm going to manifest the other one. So you're doing the korbanos while I'm using my chachma, my wisdom, scheming. And the comment down below, where it says, Ata echad, meaning you're going to take care of one portion, Ata balak b'karbanecha tul chelek shehem nesha'anim Allah b'zchut korbanos. You, Balak, you're going to do with these korbanos, and you're going to basically remove the part of the zchut that they had, that was actually Magen Aleim, that Hashem was protecting them, which you're going to see one second. How do the korbanos protect us? Whereas I, Bilam, b'chakmasi atol hachelek shehem nish'ani mola b'zchut birchas kohanim, and he explains that's why the word ko is used twice, and now it's clear in the pasuk. In the English source sheet, I quoted here, let's find it. I think it's number 8. Number 8, this is a comment on the Art Scroll Chumash on Genesis 15:8. Abraham says, how am I going to know? And God says, you're going to enter this covenant with these korbanos called the Brit Bein Betarim. It's a covenant between the pieces. He cuts the korbanos in half and he walks through them. So Abraham says, how will I know? Abraham thought that the promise of the land was conditional on the righteousness of himself and his offspring. And he feared that he was not worthy to receive it. And his descendants might sin and become unworthy to retain it. Can you imagine, God forbid, if we became unworthy? It's a possibility. I discussed this before. The Muslims actually hold that we lost the right to the land. Because why? Because we're not keeping the mitzvahs. You know, when they say we don't recognize Israel as a Jewish state, they might be right. They might be right. Do you recognize it as a Jewish state? Are we allowed to go and build the Beis HaMikdash? No. If it was a Jewish state, I imagine we would. It's a state of Jews. Baruch Hashem, it's a slow progression. And eventually, they will recognize us as a Jewish state. But we have to act Jewish a little bit more, right? Okay, so by telling him, it continues, by God telling Avram to use animals to seal the covenant, God was answering his original question, how will I know? You and your descendants will merit the land because of the sacrifices you're about to offer. Avram's offering of those sacrifices, Brit Bein Betarim, not only then, as well as the temple offerings that I will institute as a means of atonement for your children. Now, do we have a temple today? Can we make offerings? No. But Avram persisted that one day the temple would be destroyed. He knew. What merit would Israel have then? God answered. This is what God told Avram. that when the Jewish people recite the order of the sacrificial service, as it is contained in our daily prayers, God would consider it as if they had actually brought the offerings. We're going to call this b'diavad, meaning when we don't have the temple, what choice do we have? Our lips are replacing the bullocks. That's a truism. It's just a fact. But what's lichachila? What is the best case scenario? That we have a rebuilt temple and we have the korbanos karoi as proscribed. So I think it's just a little bit of a promotion for the minyan, the morning minyan of Yiboneh. Come and say korbanos with us. And if you're not with us, say korbanos on your own, wherever you are. Okay, so now the Yakar says, he wants to resolve what is quoted in the Medrash. Okay, so there's a verse in Numbers 22, verse 6. Where do we have that on our sheet? Number 10. So remember the word kaf hey. It says over there, let's start in English. So now please come and curse this people for me. This is, right, a conversation between Balak and Bilam. For they are too powerful for me. Perhaps I will be able to wage war. That's how we're going to translate it for the moment. They want to wage war against them, drive them out of the land, for I know that whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed. We're talking about Bilam. So when it says to wage war, it says nun kafeh, nakeh. Now, if you look at Rashi, we're going to read it as diminished, right? When in modern Hebrew you have a manak, you call it a discount or a grant. It's a reduction in price. No matter how you look at it, it's a reduction. He wanted to reduce the Jewish people from 625,000 to less than 600,000. He wanted to wipe out 25,000. Again, the number 25. This was his goal, right? To go against the bracha of God and to reduce us. Because as we explained in other shirim on this parsha, by the number, remember Naso is about the census. That we need a gush, we need some kind of minimum number of 600,000. We discussed this many times on this parsha. That's the magic number, 600,000. And the only way to, right? So if we had less than that, the Shekhinah would not rest. That's why there's a census. And we'll call it by the 1st of Nisan, by the 1st of Iyar. That whole 30-day period. We want to make sure that God's presence will rest in a permanent fashion. So you have to have 600,000. So I'll say it outside, then we'll see it inside. He wanted to wipe out 25,000 Jews to bring the number down below 600,000. He did not succeed. How many did he succeed in wiping out through the plague that was caused because of the Jews' sins? 24,000. One less. He wanted 25,000, but he only succeeded in 24,000. That's what it means when it says nakeh, nun kaf hey. Right? The word is to reduce. He wanted to reduce it 25,000. You hear this?
Yes.
Look at the second part of Rashi on number 10. Right? The first one is, that's how we translate. I will just create a war. I'll just have war against them. That would be nakeh. But another interpretation, nakeh in its Mishnaic term, means to deduct, min nakeh. Okay, so min nakeh, to diminish them. And number 11 is my own comment. If you take the math, there was two numbers, 603,000 and 22,000. The Jewish people were 603,000, and Levi was another 22,000. What does that equal? 625,000. So he wanted to wipe out 25,000. Let's go back to the Yakar. He says, Ulai uchal nakeba, ma menakin min hasor chelek kavdalet. What exactly did he want to eliminate from the measure? A 1/24th. 1/24th. Before we go into this, we talk about Kohanim. There's 24 gifts that they get. There were 24 watches by the Kohanim. There's 24 mumim by the Kohanim. There's 24, what's the word? To be a Kohen, right? You have the Mishnah here. I have the quote here. There's the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. In Pirkei Avot, the famous Pirkei Avot with the 48 ways to wisdom. It mentions that Torah is greater than both priesthood and kingship, because to acquire Torah, you have to have 48 ways. 48 ways of acquiring the Torah. But to acquire the kingship, right, through the seed of Dovid, there's 30 qualities. And priesthood, there are 24 qualities. So the number 24 is a running theme when it comes to the Kohanim. Again, the 24 watches. That's not how it started. When Am Yisrael was small in the desert, so Moses instituted that every Kohen had to serve once every 6 weeks. It was basically 6 watches. But as the families expanded and expanded, obviously you needed more watches. And so today, I say today, Halavai today, by the end of the second Beis HaMikdash, we had what we call 24 watches. So basically 8 Kohen served in the temple 2 weeks a year, right? And with a 24-week hiatus, a 23-week hiatus between, and of course during the Hagim, they all came and they all worked. So the number 24, we said, is a very consistent number. So he wanted to remove 1/24th of the Jewish people. 1/24th of 600,000 is 25,000. Kach bikesh lenakot misrael chelek kavdalid min shishim ribo. That's exactly what the Yakar is claiming here. That he wanted to wipe out, he wanted to remove or diminish 24%, chelek, 1/24th of the Jewish, of the 600,000 people. And what is the math? 1/24th, divide 24 into 600,000, you get 25,000. He wanted to wipe that out. Well, guess what? There's to ask this very fundamental question. Ma yitaron lo b'kol amalo kishiyanake kafei elev min shishim ribo. What advantage, what does he gain if he's able to, through his efforts, wipe out or diminish 25,000 Jews from that 600,000 number? Lama naflu dafka kaf daled elef. And why did it specifically happen that only 24,000 were actually wiped out? Just so you know, I brought it down here, so if you're not familiar with the Psukim, it says over number 12. Right? If you look at Numbers chapter 25, it's really verse 9, but I just wanted to show you verse 1 and 9, that Israel had settled in Shittim, the Yeshiv Yisrael b'Shittim. The people began to commit harlotry with whom? With the Benot Moab. Okay, and then what happened in verse 9? You hamesim b'magefa ar bo'ol ve'esrim elef. 24,000 Jews died in that plague. Okay, why am I bringing that down? Because he wanted 25,000 to die, but only 24,000 died. The question is why? What specifically 24? Without doubt, right? He definitely wanted, Elavadai, with certainty, that he lo bikesh ki'im. He only wanted to uproot that original bracha of Birkas Kohanim, or if you want to say the bracha for Abraham, he wanted to uproot the ko. He wanted, in our verse, ko tivarchu. This is how you should bless. And what would he think? What was he thinking? V'chashav shenifilat kaf hey elif nogeya bebirkas ko. That if I could only wipe out 25,000 Jews, that would affect Birkas Kohanim. And he was right. You understand? Because the Shekhinah only rested when you have 600,000. And anything less than that would affect the Magen would affect the security of the Jewish people. Ubebitul bracha zu yelo makom az leklalam. He thought if I can only bring the Jewish population down below 600,000, my curse would affect them. I could actually curse them. Avalo Allah biyado. Baruch Hashem, he was not successful. He didn't reach that number. The only thing he was able to wipe out was 24,000. Ad mispar ko lo alal biklal. He never reached the 25,000. Ki amdalem brichat ko tevarchu, because that holy blessing of the Kohanim stood strong and guarded us. Shelo tachul haklala yoter, so that the curse didn't have a place to settle. And Zeh Perush Yakar, according to the Yakar, there's a very dear explanation. Now the Yakar wants to discuss again the number 25 from the word ko. Ulai mispar ko, which we said is 25, b'schus kaf dalid matanas kahuna, is somehow related to the merit of the 24 gifts that we give to the Kohanim. As it says in Baba Kama 110b, if you look in source number 24, which we're not going to read, but basically there are the 24 priestly gifts that were given to Aaron to his son, and it's a little bit lumdish, but basically, im birkat kohanim hare kaf he matanos kahuna. Ready for this? It's unbelievable. I'm not even sure if this is where he says it. Yeah, this is where he says it. So the Kohanim received 24 gifts. They received 24 gifts from the Jewish people. But he's saying that they receive a 25th gift. It's ko tevarchu. With 25, you will be blessed. But we got done saying it's 24. What's the 25th blessing or gift? The gift of giving. The gift of, I'm sure you've all heard that before. Listen to this. B'schutam chala abrach al Yisrael. It's through the merit of the Kohanim that there's an actual blessing that's given to the Jewish people. V'im tishal, and if you're going to ask, mahano yesh l'kohanim b'bracha zu, what kind of benefit? Okay, so very nice. You get a bracha because you're giving the bracha. What benefit is there to the Kohanim by giving the bracha? B'schutam, what is he saying? Shetehei nachshavas biklal kol matanot kahuna. That somehow we're going to include it in the 25 gifts. It's only 24 gifts. You're going to say the Kohanim are getting such hana from giving a bracha? They're gaining so much by giving the bracha that it's going to be called a 25th gift? So we all are familiar with this idea. God says in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, I will bless those who bless you. The Kohanim are blessing us. That's not a bracha that's going to fall onto them. They're going to get such a great blessing because they're blessing us. Avarecha mivarechecha. Right? I will bless those who bless you. Im kain al yidei bracha zu yikablu gam hema bracha. How is it they're receiving a bracha? Think about it a second. So, im kain al yidei bracha zu yikablu gam hema bracha. Somehow or another, God is going to bless the Kohanim because they're blessing the Jewish people. They're going to receive a bracha. What bracha are they going to receive? So we learn out that first line, Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha, God is going to give a blessing to the possessions of the Jewish people. If I say you have to give 10%, or whatever percent you have to give of your money to the Kohanim, if you're only making $100, you're only giving $10. But if I'm blessing you with a tremendous amount of wealth, the Kohanim are blessing you with wealth. Now you're making $1 million. So 10% is 100,000. Big difference between $10 and 100,000. So the more they bless you, the more you are blessed, the more you will give them in return. Follow the simple math? 10% is the same. 10%, okay, it's only 10%. but it's 10% of 1,000,000 is different than 10% of 100. And therefore, the Kohanim are also going to get wealthy. So that's the bracha that comes back to them. As he says, bracha zu chozeret gam lekohanim. It's like, what do you call recycling? What do you call, it's coming back. Well, it's coming back. So it returns. This bracha returns also to the Kohanim. Ki bezman sheyesh l'Yisrael nechasim meruvim, at a time when the Jewish people have so much more physical wealth. L'fiyem yirbu matanas kuna. So according to them, of course, according to the achuzim, according to the percentages, of course it's going to increase the amount of gifts that we're giving to the kahuna within the trumas and maisras. Because if ain't the case, v'im lo kain, me'ayin yikachu. Where else remember, we didn't really have meiser kasafim so much. That's a rabbinic law. But maaser from certain grains are midaraisa. And we were an agriculture community. So if, mea sharim, right, 100 gates, or, right, so much more than you would expect, so much comes out. If, where else are they going to take it from? From the goyren, from the granary, or from the yekev, of course. It's all going to increase the gashmiut. It's going to increase the physical wealth of the country, and as a result, the Kohanim themselves will be blessed. Now, this was just a simple lesson, right? Some deep stuff. Trust me, if you keep reading the Yakar, you're going to find some real gems. What I do want to say is that we're here to learn, how to think clearly, how to focus. It's important. When you're learning, God wants you to remember His Torah. He wants you to. It's actually one of the 613 mitzvahs. You're not allowed to cause yourself to forget His Torah. So you have to do chazorah. You have to learn over and over and over. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you're always going to find new, deeper insights. We talked about this before, Shavuos, chidushing, right? The idea of finding something new and deeper. And it's only going to come from consistency, going over it and over and over. And I give you all a bracha. This is the first year after Shavuos that we start off this year with a greater commitment than we had last year to find time, right? We can always find 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe more, to do some review and to go deeper and stretch your muscle with your Hebrew. Okay? It's only going to get better as time goes on, like wine. Like wine, like a good bottle of wine, right? That's how we started off. Well, it only gets better the older it gets. Anyway, I wish you all not only a good summer, a Shavua Tov, but a great life, and we'll see you next week.
Wow. It's